People were bracing for the end.
It's August 2023 and the start of a new football season. A time for optimism and excitement? Well, maybe. But the storm clouds circling Tottenham Hotspur are not just the grey ones dumping all this rain on N17. Many fans aren't happy, and increasingly their anger is directed towards the club's owner, the federally indicted Joe Lewis, and the chairman, Daniel Levy.
I think it's better to pray, pray, pray. I think it's better to pray, pray.
Levy rarely gives interviews, so it's hard to decipher what he really thinks about Tottenham. His predecessor, Alan Sugar, was vocal in his disdain for many aspects of professional football and the players and managers within the game. So in a sense, we need to go back to the era of Irving Scholar to come across a chairman who was a committed fan, prepared to share his passion for the club and his philosophy for running Tottenham Hotspur.
And people look up, and the clouds are red of fear.
In November 1984, Scholar sat down with my dad, Ken Goldman, to discuss his first few months as chairman of the club. It's a fascinating insight into the role of the football club chairman, the massive shift in the economics of English football in the Premier League era, but also that the issues of the 1980s are still being discussed today. Earlier in 1984, Spurs had won the UEFA Cup, but despite that, manager Keith Birkinshaw had left the club. So a good place to start is Scholar's view on the relationship between manager and chairman.
Often it's said that the chairman and the manager must have a special relationship. Do you find that that has to be so, or have you got a different viewpoint on it?
The manager and the players have got to have the really special relationship. I mean, that's the most important relationship on the football side of a football club. They together, that team effort there, has the true effect of what goes on a match day. And I don't think anything that the chairman really says will change, in a sense, the results. Although, yes, it is important that a chairman and a manager are not seen to be, but are actually genuinely close. I mean, we're very lucky here that we've got a particular manager who's an exceptionally nice fellow. I mean, you couldn't want to meet a nicer person. Exceptionally, I think he's very talented. He's extremely hardworking, and I think he thoroughly enjoys what he does. As he said to me when he got the job, he said, "I've been a great success," he said, "in everything I've done, and I'm certainly not going to fail now." And I'm delighted with the way it started for him, and I know the players look up to him and have an enormous amount of respect for him, and they all like him. He's a very likeable person, and I think that's quite a nice thing. Here, basically what happens really is that the manager manages. He looks after the football side top to bottom. He's in charge of all the football teams within the club. He appoints all his own staff and does everything to do with that, and there is no interference whatsoever on that side. The only time, in a sense, that I have time to time got involved is perhaps when it gets to the point of he wants to either buy or sell a player. And what has happened is here, we've had a number of in and outgoing transfers during the summer. And basically what happened was I got a call from the manager saying to me that there was a particular player that he wanted to purchase. We talked about the value of the player, or how much was being asked by the selling club. And then what happened was I said to him whether or not the money was available. And I've met this because, don't forget, I'm very new in football. So I hear all these things about the managers doing everything. I've never yet had one instance where the manager dealt with the transfer. Each transfer, both in and outgoing, to this club, in the last, well, certainly in the last 6 months, let's say, the chairman of the opposing club, i.e. being the buyer or the seller, has been the person who has negotiated the transfer on behalf of his club. So there's been, certainly in a sense, perhaps a little bit of, I wouldn't say criticism, but scepticism levelled in our direction at this club, saying that we wanted to do everything, which wasn't true. It seems that it's common, it's the norm in football today. I mean, we transferred a player to a club into the second division. Their chairman dealt with the transfer. He actually contacted us. He contacted me direct. He said that I understand our managers have been talking, and we would, I understand, we'd like to do business. And I have found that all over the place. And that goes from the biggest clubs in the country. When we dealt with Manchester United over Alan Brazil, I had telephone call after telephone call from Martin Edwards. I never dealt with Ron Atkinson once. Just at the initial moment that they divulged their interest, had a meeting with Ron Atkinson and Martin Edwards. But afterwards, when it actually came to Manchester United trying to purchase Alan Brazil, Martin Edwards dealt with it top to bottom. And that goes with every single transfer, in and out. Every one, bar none.
The chairman does have to be figurehead, doesn't he? I mean, there's no doubt.
That's what Fleet Street and the Football League have decreed over the years in football. And I suppose, yes, we're all, in a sense, symptoms of that.
Do you feel that the role nowadays of the chairman is to be the general that leads from the front rather than the lot that used to lead from behind? In other words, you're in the firing line.
Firing line in what respect? I think chairmen have always been, in a sense, in the firing line. I mean, some chairmen seem to want to be far more in the firing line than others. I'm one of those people who I would much rather, in a sense, lead from behind, as it were, rather than lead from the front.
I'm not talking about coming up and being controversial. I'm not
Yes.
talking about the chairman that does that. I'm
Yes.
talking about the chairman that is available to receive criticism rather than buffer it by somebody else. You can never reach the chairman type of thing. That's really what I'm...
No, I think that, we try to make ourselves here as available as we possibly can. And, no, I think we have a responsibility. I said before, it's an enormous responsibility. I believe it is anyway. And you have to face up to those responsibilities.
It's very important, presumably, for there to be a sufficient feed-through of information, not only in relation to the football club, but the supporters
Yes.
and anything which absolutely relates to the club whatsoever.
Yes.
How do you ensure that you get this sort of feedback?
Well, what we try to do, what I certainly don't like to do, is I don't like supporters to have to read, in a sense, gossipy things which I know aren't true. Because I know myself that every time I picked up a newspaper or heard a rumour or something like that, and I found that, yes, we were looking at this player and that player and so forth, I think you'll find that actually seemed to have died down as far as Tottenham is concerned. It may be live with other clubs, but even when, for instance, we bought Clive Allen, for instance, there was nothing leading up to the transfer in the newspapers. You picked up the paper on a Saturday morning, I think it was Evening Standard on a Friday afternoon, and it was announced that Clive Allen had signed for Tottenham Hotspur. John Chidozie had signed for Tottenham Hotspur. There was no lead-up, there was no preamble to it, because I don't think that's really the best way to do business. You don't talk about it, you just get on with it and you do it. So when there is something to report, then we obviously convey it at that time, but there's no point us telling the supporters we're thinking about this and thinking about that and thinking about something else. They don't want to hear that anyway.
What's striking is that so many of the issues that concern fans now were being discussed in the 1980s, including ticket prices.
But I mean, there has been, like one here, short interviews on LBC, people phoning in, and
Yes.
one or two things on the television where the supporters have said they thought that the price of coming to Spurs was too expensive. Now, do you get that kind of feedback through?
Okay,
And can you
I get a
answer
number
for
of,
them,
yes,
really?
I get, it's like any chairman, you get quite a large post in a year, and I try to answer all the letters that do come in, whether they be complimentary or rather unflattering letters. We have had a few complaints, obviously. If prices go up, you always get a few complaints if the team isn't winning every game as well, remember that. But I think we've tried very hard to explain that costs have risen, and our costs will have risen this season like every other club in the league. And therefore we have to compensate that, and what we've tried to say is that the money is going to be spent on the club, so therefore long term it should be really they're paying in a sense for the future. I mean, supporters might say, well, we need a player and he's going to cost £750,000. I mean, that's all very nice, but we know what has happened in the past when clubs have actually spent money that they couldn't afford. They got themselves, there are a number of clubs today who spent very heavily in the past, and years later most of those players have been transferred elsewhere, and they're still left with enormous debts. We certainly don't want to do that. we'll cut our cloth accordingly.
And although many Spurs fans now believe the club's leadership focuses too much on the business of the club rather than the team's success, that's not new either.
We as a company are a profitable company, as we've shown when we floated last year. At that time we raised £3.8 million, which was the greatest sum of money any football club in the history of the game had ever attempted, let alone succeeded in raising, which eliminated the debts that we had at that particular time, which was quite important for the club. And going on from there, we made a forecast at that time to make £850,000 profits last year, which we did, and in fact we beat it. We've made no predictions for this year, but I would hopefully feel very comfortable that we won't do any worse than last year. In fact, we would hope to exceed it. Other football clubs, generally speaking, aren't too particularly bothered whether or not they make a profit or not, and I don't think their shareholders are particularly bothered if they make a profit or not, but this club, from that point of view, is a different animal.
The football side of it must obviously be the most important side. I mean, in some respects it's regarded as a business because
Yes.
it's a bit
Yes, yes.
And
Well, football is a business. Let's be clear about that. Football clubs have been, numerous football clubs over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years have been very perilously close to extinction, including this one, which it could have been. I'm not saying it would have been, but it's a possibility. It could have been in the same precarious position. Any company where its liabilities exceed its assets, as you'll appreciate, is a company that's insolvent and cannot trade. And therefore, a football club is not immune in any way from any other company. Every company, in a sense, is a business, and therefore it's governed by the normal market forces and so forth. And if they don't make profits and they continually make losses, then eventually they're going to go broke. So football clubs are no different from any other business.
I was going to say, that obviously brings me on to the point as to whether too many people in the past have forgotten that's it. In other words, it was once, well, not once said, it's been several times said that too many directors and chairmen would not run their own businesses the way they ran their football clubs, and if they did, it would be entirely...
Well, maybe that's right. I've not got the experience of that. When we became involved in this club, we had pretty reasonably firm ideas on how we wanted it, in a sense, to be run. And we wanted it to be... there were problems beforehand, as you know, of, I can't say financial mismanagement, but let's say it wasn't run as exactly that. It wasn't run as perhaps as the people at some time in the past may have run their own businesses. We decided that there could only be one way to run a business, and we attempted to run it what we considered to be the right way.
And it's clear that even in 1984, talk of the so-called big clubs and splits within the Football League were high on the football agenda of the day.
So have you got any message that you, well, not so much message, but if there was something you could do to change the game in some way, that Super Leagues or...
Well, I would like to think that if football's going to go forward, then football clubs generally have got to be pulling together. And there's no point us all pulling off into different directions, which they are at the moment. The Football League as such, really, you've got factions within the Football League all pulling against each other. You see, maybe half the First Division clubs want one particular thing, whereas the other half of the First Division clubs don't want the same thing, and then the Second Division clubs probably want something totally different. The Third and Fourth Division, yet again, want something totally different. So, I mean, you've got this terrible dichotomy where everybody is pulling against each other, and they're pulling against each other. It's all in a sense about self-interest, which I think is bad, and I think that's bad for the game, and I think that in a sense that people should be putting the game slightly ahead of their own particular clubs. But whether or not, which way it's going to go in the future is a difficult one to say. I think what is going to happen, people complain about the big clubs. They've always been the big clubs. There's nothing different, I mean, look back since the war. Manchester United have always been one of the biggest clubs in the country. Liverpool, even though they're in the Second Division up to about 60, they came up in 61, 62, so from 62, 63. We're always a big club. Everton were always a big club. Tottenham, in their way, since the war, have always been a big club, and Arsenal have always been a big club. So, I mean, this sudden thing as if suddenly over the last 3 or 4 years, Arsenal, Manchester United, Liverpool and Tottenham and other clubs as well have suddenly become big clubs is laughable, because they've always been big clubs. You've got the converse, where you've had very big clubs who unfortunately have gone downhill. You've got clubs today playing in the 3rd and the 4th division who, not that long ago, well perhaps it is now, some time ago, but I mean, to me, not that long ago, were big 1st division clubs. They have the support. They've always had the support. They've got the players. They've always had the players. So all these things about suddenly the big clubs exist, big in capital B-I-G, to me is a bit laughable, because, as I say, I think they've always been the big clubs. Whether or not they all will continue to be the big clubs, well, that's another question mark. But I wouldn't be too surprised.
There's no doubt that the Scholar era had its problems, starting with Birkinshaw's departure and culminating in some disastrous investments at the PLC that almost bankrupted the club. Clearly, Tottenham's financial position is incredibly healthy right now, even if the team has underperformed. But it's striking to hear a Tottenham Hotspur chairman displaying a genuine love for the club, and that's a powerful symbol as we head into this coming season.
And do I sense that for you this is a fulfilment of every schoolboy's dream to be very much involved with a pro club?
Yes, I said, no, it's not to be involved with a pro club from my point of view. It's to be involved with Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, well, yes.
And, if it could have been, yes, the club that I've always followed all my life, and I would never dream of, it would just, no other club really, as I said before, as far as I was concerned, existed. So, yes, and I think that's the same for most football fans throughout the country, isn't it? You don't really support one and then drift off and go and support someone else. I think it's in your blood. Once your team is, it may be Lincoln City, that's your team. No matter how well everybody else is doing, you always hope your team's going to do well. Yes, it is very much a boyhood dream, I suppose, to actually be involved with your club, and I think anybody who's a supporter and goes to football every single week of the year would feel exactly the same perhaps as I do. I mean, if you gave anybody a chance to be involved with their particular club, no matter who it is, I'm sure that they would be delighted.
I'm very proud of my dad for securing and then keeping this interview with Scholar. And I also give credit to the Tottenham chairman of the day for sharing his vision for the club and his efforts to juggle both the joys of the role and its biggest challenges.
Most difficult thing about being chairman? I've never really thought about what the most difficult thing is about being chairman. All I can say is that there's no one particular thing that's perhaps particularly difficult in comparison to everything else. I think generally it's quite a demanding position to be in. And I think what's terribly, terribly important for any chairman, I believe anyway, is that first and foremost the club must always come first, before anybody. No matter who that person is within the club always has to come first. If that happens, and the chairman puts the club above himself and everything else like that, then I think that's a good thing. I think he's got to really be totally immersed in doing whatever he does, and I think also he's got to be really deep down. I think he's really got to be a fan at heart, isn't he? It's all about love, I suppose, and I think to be a good chairman, I think you've got to have the club firmly in your heart, and if you have that, then obviously you're always going to try and give your very best, and if you always do that, then I hope then probably people would forgive you for any errors that you make, because you're doing them in good, whatever decision it is, it's done in good faith.
And does that lead on to what perhaps is the easiest and best bit of being chairman?
The best bit about being chairman? The best bit about being chairman. I could be very trite and say you get a good seat, but the best thing about being chairman, it's the honour, really, and I think that's the thing. It's the honour of actually being lucky to be the chairman of your particular club. and I think it's that's really what is the most probably, I wouldn't say enjoyable thing, but I mean it's a very important thing.